The market feed shattered the quiet as red bled across every chart and hope. My phone shook like a trapped bird, and Evan Cole said, "This is a glitch." The screen answered with a halt notice and a margin call. Noah Brooks said, "Servers are fine, Evan." A headline crawled across the lobby ticker naming our lender in trouble. Lena Park said, "We pause funding until volatility stabilizes." The word pause felt like ice sliding into my ribs. An alert flagged a transfer I never authorized. Evan Cole said, "Who moved $2 million at midnight?" Victor Hale smiled from a studio desk as if the loss were a weather report. He spoke about fragile founders and efficient cleansing. Maya Ortiz said, "Check the footnote in your covenant." The footnote turned my credit line into quicksand. Gordon Price said, "You took cheap money, now pay the VIG." I stared at the lobby's glass and saw myself already sold. A fire alarm test chirped, and it sounded like a countdown. Evan Cole said, "Nobody leaves, not yet." Security locked the mezzanine, and we set up a war room with stale coffee and dread. Noah Brooks said, "Your authorization key was used at 017. The number felt like a fingerprint on my skull. I traced the transfer path and found our lender's escrow. Evan Cole said, "So they swept our cash first." The footnote made it legal and merciless. Lena Park said, "Protecting downside is not betrayal." The word echoed like coins in a well. I called the bank, and a machine offered sympathy in 4 languages. Gordon Price said, "You built on a promise, not on capital." I wanted to punch the promise until it bled truth. Maya Ortiz said, "There's a hidden trigger tied to your volatility band." The band snapped when the market sneezed. Evan Cole said, "Then we rebuild cash inside the hour." The clock refused to blink. The news named a short thesis, authored by a ghost, with Victor's cadence. Evan Cole said, "He wants panic to do his work." Our inbox erupted with terminations and pity. Noah Brooks said, "Vendors moved to cash on delivery." The floor felt like thin ice over black water. Lena Park said, "Prove solvency by noon, or I unwind." Noon arrived like a judge in a quiet room. I called Victor Hale and reached a velvet voicemail. Evan Cole said, "Call me if you believe in fair markets." The line never called back. Gordon Price said, "Fair is for children." I thought of our users who trusted payments to clear. Maya Ortiz said, "Check the router logs at the sweep timestamp." The logs yawned open, and something familiar winked at me. The bank's marble branch smelled like old paper and quiet refusals. A manager smiled with their eyes and slid me a brochure on resilience. Evan Cole said, "Your covenant trap drained our ops float." The smile did not move. They showed a clause that bloomed when volatility crossed a line. Gordon Price said they wrote it for storms. And this is weather. I watched retirees sign forms with steady hands. Maya Ortiz said, "They hedged your deposits with your receivables." The equation turned kindness into yield. Evan Cole said, "Reverse it, and I will prove cash by tonight." The answer came pre-printed on a white card. The door clicked behind me like a stamp on my record. Back at the lobby, a courier delivered a battered envelope without a return. Maya Ortiz said, "I didn't send that." Inside, a thumb drive and a single word on a card: "Breathe." Evan Cole said, "Plug it on an air-gapped box." Noah Brooks set up a clean machine and closed the blinds. The files mapped transfers to a shell tied to Victor's fund. Gordon Price said, "This is leverage, not salvation." My hands shook because leverage cuts both ways. Lena Park said, "If you can document fraud, I stay." The rain eased, and sirens faded into a tired city hum. Evan Cole said, "We move carefully, and we move now." The countdown resumed with a steadier beat. The storm outside blurred the skyline, but inside the war room, the silence grew heavy with memory. Evan Cole said, "I built this company from nights spent coding in a cramped studio." The hum of old radiators whispered of the sacrifices. Noah Brooks said, "You slept 3 hours a night and still dragged us into pitch meetings." Evan stared at the window, seeing reflections of his younger self carrying groceries up broken staircases. Gordon Price said, "You mistook hustle for immunity, but markets don't respect sweat." Evan pressed his palms into the table, recalling the first check from Lena Park that came with strings woven tighter than rope. He had chased freedom, yet bound himself in clauses and covenants. Maya Ortiz said, "Your story makes people care, but caring doesn't stop a trigger clause." The air tasted of stale coffee and fear. Evan whispered, "If I lose this, it's not just equity. It's the life I carved from nothing." The rain thinned as memories drifted back to Lena's first meeting with Evan in a coffee shop smelling of burnt beans. Lena Park said, "I will write a check, but ownership costs more than passion." Her voice had carried power that cut through Evan's eager promises. He had shown graphs built on hope, and she had nodded with a smile carved in precision. Evan Cole said, "You told me you believed in vision, not numbers." She had replied, "Vision feeds numbers. Numbers pay for vision." Noah Brooks, remembering from his corner seat, whispered, "You traded independence for a shot at daylight." Evan felt his jaw tighten as the contract's words pressed like shackles. Gordon Price said, "Capital is a leash, Evan. You wore it willingly." The ghosts of that cafe lingered in his mind, reminding him that freedom had been mortgaged before the first dollar arrived. In the dim office light, Gordon Price leaned forward, his voice cracked with lessons scarred by decades. Gordon Price said, "I once bet billions on a derivative no one understood, and it broke me." His eyes carried weight heavier than his words. Evan Cole said, "You turned ruin into wisdom." Gordon chuckled bitterly and said, "No, I turned arrogance into rubble. Wisdom is optional." Maya Ortiz shifted in her chair and said, "Your past proves the system punishes greed and rewards deceit." Gordon said, "It punishes trust, Maya. Greed is just armor." The hum of air vents filled the pause, making every syllable taste metallic. Evan whispered, "So I am learning from a fallen god." Gordon replied, "No, you're learning how easy gods become pawns." His words lingered like ash in the air, coating the room with the inevitability of cycles. The morning sun cracked through clouds, washing the streets where victims walked unknowing of the battle overhead. Evan Cole watched a young delivery rider struggle with a broken scooter. Evan said, "Our collapse will shatter people who never signed our contracts." Maya Ortiz said, "That rider loses hours of pay when payments stall." The weight of invisible casualties pressed harder than any lawsuit. Noah Brooks muttered, "Our servers process the livelihoods of thousands." Evan clenched his fists and said, "We are failing more than investors. We are failing trust." Gordon Price said, "Trust is fragile, and you are no custodian." The rider's laughter at a passing joke echoed against Evan's guilt. He whispered, "I cannot carry another's ruin." The city swallowed the sound, indifferent yet unforgiving. At night, the apartment walls groaned under weight of memories. Evan Cole said, "I told my father I'd never beg a banker for mercy." His reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror seemed older than his years. He thought of his mother balancing bills at a chipped kitchen table. Noah Brooks said, "You carried your family's fight into every boardroom." Evan pressed his forehead to the mirror and whispered, "And now I carry their failure too." Maya Ortiz said, "The system was broken long before you stepped in." Evan replied, "But I promised to bend it." The hum of the fridge carried like an old lullaby. He stepped into the dark hall, each creak a reminder that every victory was rented, every independence fragile. He said, "If I lose, their struggle meant nothing." The silence did not answer, but it consumed him. The inbox overflowed with cancellations, each subject line heavier than the last. Evan Cole said, "Our clients are bolting like horses spooked by fire." Noah Brooks muttered, "They smelled smoke before we admitted it." Gordon Price said trust leaves quicker than capital. Evan pressed his hand to the glass, the city blinking with indifference. Maya Ortiz said, these vendors found loopholes to escape contracts. Someone fed them the flaws. Evan's jaw tightened as Victor Hale's shadow loomed across every headline. He whispered, he's dismantling us piece by piece, not with fire, but with whispers. The room buzzed with the sound of dying machines, servers shutting down as unpaid bills stacked higher. Evan said, every silence feels like a betrayal now. The servers groaned like old bones, each warning beep a countdown. Noah Brooks said, if invoices don't clear, nodes will cascade offline. Evan Cole said, keep them alive, clients need heartbeat signals. Gordon Price shook his head and said, this is triage, not strategy. Maya Ortiz said, the contracts are designed to suffocate, not sustain. Evan's mind replayed the moment he signed, pen trembling with ambition, blind buried traps. He said, we signed our independence away in the fine print. The glow from monitors painted the room in false daylight. Noah muttered, then we bleed just enough to buy time. Evan whispered, time is the only currency left. The boardroom filled with echoes of power far from their grasp. Lena Park's voice cut sharp over the speaker, prove liquidity by tomorrow or we unwind. Evan Cole said, you said partnership, not extortion. Her tone didn't waver, protection is survival, Evan. Gordon Price smirked, you forgot investors love control more than profit. Maya Ortiz scrolled through clauses, finding every noose disguised as support. She said, the agreements were never equal. Evan slammed his fist on the table, veins tight, and whispered, they built the trap, and I walked in smiling. The silence after her disconnect felt like a verdict passed in absence. Noah Brooks said, we can't fight clauses with code. Papers scattered across the floor as if they carried the weight of defeat. Evan Cole crouched, eyes on figures bleeding red. He said, every column is another nail. Noah Brooks said, debt multiplies like rot, no code patches this. Gordon Price lit a cigarette and said, you thought numbers obey vision. They don't. Smoke coiled into the stale air like accusation. Maya Ortiz said, we could expose Victor's tie to the shell accounts, but risk collapse anyway. Evan's eyes burned. Expose him, and maybe someone listens. The printer jammed mid-page, the sound jagged like the pulse of their crumbling empire. He whispered, we're already ghosts in their system. Evening bled into night as Evan Cole stood at the window, city lights fractured like broken jewels. He said, I built for freedom, but now I live on borrowed time. Gordon Price said, that's the curse of every founder who courts money. Noah Brooks said, if we go down, our users lose more than we do. Maya Ortiz said, then you must decide. Protect them or protect yourself. Evan's reflection stared back older, wearier, carved by battles he hadn't yet won. He whispered, if trust is gone, there's nothing left to sell. The rain returned, drumming like a clock too loud to ignore. He said, this is not an ending. This is a reckoning. The thumb drive's files unfolded like a labyrinth of betrayal, each folder pointing back to Victor Hale's empire. Evan Cole said, he bled us, and then he sold the blood. Maya Ortiz whispered, shell companies, offshore wires, buried inside funds. Noah Brooks said, this isn't sabotage, this is architecture. Gordon Price muttered, the system rewards predators who build cages for prey. Evan slammed the desk and said, we can expose this. Maya cautioned, exposure cuts both ways, you'll burn with him if we're wrong. The city lights blinked like indifferent witnesses. Evan said, if I fall, I'd rather drag him with me. The room held its breath, as if history listened. Evan met Lena Park in a rooftop lounge under fractured moonlight, the skyline sharp with promise and menace. Lena said, you think proof will free you, but investors don't care who stole. Evan replied, then why back him while I drown? She sipped her drink slowly and said, because Victor delivers, and you hesitate. His jaw tightened. I built from sweat, not manipulation. Lena's gaze pierced. Sweat doesn't scale. Ruthlessness does. The wind rattled against glass, carrying echoes of distant sirens. Evan said, "You once believed in my vision." Lena replied, "I still do, but visions don't pay debts." He turned away, city lights flickering like temptations. Noah Brooks traced the code logs again and froze when he found the signature buried in plain sight. "Noah," said the breach came from inside. Someone trusted. Evan Cole leaned in and whispered, "Who?" Noah's face drained. "It's routed through your partner account." Evan's chest tightened, recalling every late-night pact, every handshake built on trust. Gordon Price said, "Partnerships rot quicker than fruit when money ferments." Maya Ortiz added, "If this proves true, betrayal isn't outside, it's homegrown." Evan whispered, "Then I have been feeding my enemy with open hands." Silence draped the room like a shroud, heavier than the storm outside. The confrontation took place in a dim parking garage, echoes bouncing like accusations. Evan Cole said, "You stole the lifeblood of our company." The former partner smirked and replied, "I safeguarded my future, not yours." Evan's voice cracked, "You sold me out to Victor." The partner shrugged. "Victor rewards loyalty better than you reward sacrifice." Maya Ortiz whispered, "He signed his betrayal in your name." Gordon Price said coldly, "You expected loyalty in a game designed for knives." Evan lunged, fists trembling, but stopped inches away, rage boiling into silence. The garage's fluorescent hum mocked the weight of broken trust. Back in the war room, Evan's voice trembled with fury and resolve. "He hollowed us out, but he left fingerprints." Maya Ortiz said, "Fingerprints buried in layers of legality." Noah Brooks said, "If we go public, the fallout crushes us too." Evan stared at his reflection in the dark glass. "Better to die fighting than fade in silence." Gordon Price said, "Then sharpen your evidence like a blade, or it will cut you first." The rain lashed harder, thunder punctuating the choice before them. Evan whispered, "The game changed tonight. We don't crawl anymore, we strike." The words lingered, heavy as steel. The boardroom became a battlefield, words sharper than steel. Evan Cole said, "Victor built this collapse, and you let him." Lena Park replied, "Proof is not power, Evan, capital is." Gordon Price muttered, "She knows the truth but fears the fallout." Maya Ortiz slammed a folder on the table and said, "This is the trail that ties Victor to shell accounts." The silence was broken only by the whir of the projector. Noah Brooks whispered, "If we release this, everything burns, even us." Evan leaned forward, voice trembling, "Then we burn together, but he burns first." Thunder rattled the windows like applause for a duel that had no winner. The call connected, Victor Hale's calm face appearing like a predator in glass. Victor said, "You think shadows frighten me?" Evan Cole replied, "Not shadows, exposure." Victor smirked. "Exposure feeds me. I turn scandal into profit." Gordon Price muttered, "He's not bluffing, he's rehearsed this for years." Maya Ortiz leaned closer to the screen and said, "We have documents even regulators can't ignore." Victor chuckled, "Regulators dine at my table?" Evan's knuckles whitened on the desk. "Then let the world watch you choke on your feast." The connection cut, his smile frozen mid-frame, a mask of confidence hiding cracks. Night bled into morning, as Evan Cole stared at the trading screen, showing their last reserves. He whispered, "One final move." Gordon Price said, "Betting the last chip is either genius or suicide." Noah Brooks muttered, "The servers can route funds, but if it fails, the system freezes." Maya Ortiz said, "This gamble isn't just money, it's survival." Evan exhaled, "If we win, we rise. If we lose, we bury Victor with us." His finger hovered above the enter key, sweat tracing his temple. In that heartbeat, the room seemed to vanish, leaving only risk and resolve. The key pressed, launching their fate into volatile tides. The markets roared alive, screens erupting with violent swings. Evan Cole said, hold steady. Noah Brooks muttered, liquidity spike, orders filling fast. Maya Ortiz scanned alerts, voice sharp, Victor is countering, pushing false trades. Gordon Price said, he's trying to drown you with volume. Evan shouted, then ride the wave higher. Alarms chimed, graphs soared, then plummeted, each tick like a hammer blow. Sweat rolled down Evan's neck as the gamble twisted into chaos. He whispered, this isn't strategy anymore. This is survival. The final numbers flickered, red and green dancing like predators circling prey. The final bell rang, silence heavier than thunder. Evan Cole slumped back, eyes fixed on numbers frozen like fate. Maya Ortiz said, you clawed back liquidity, but at a cost. Noah Brooks muttered, we survived, but barely breathing. Gordon Price said, survival is never free. The market always takes its pound. Evan whispered, Victor's grip slipped but not broken. Rain eased outside, droplets tracing soft trails on the glass. He stood slowly, body trembling, and said, this was never about profit. This was about proving I could fight. The city lights shimmered faintly, indifferent to victories and losses alike. The storm outside finally broke, leaving the city glazed in silver reflections. Evan Cole sat alone at the long table, the documents spread like battlefield debris. He whispered, I survived the strike, but the cost hollowed me. Maya Ortiz entered quietly and said, liquidity bought time. Noah Brooks leaned against the wall, pale from exhaustion, muttering, the servers are patched, but the trust, they want logged back in. Gordon Price flicked ash into a glass and said, redemption is a luxury, this system never sells. Evan pressed his fists to his temples, hearing echoes of promises made to family, to employees, to himself. He whispered, if this was victory, why does it feel like ruin? Silence thickened, broken only by the hum of fluorescent light. The apartment smelled of burnt coffee and stale regrets. Evan Cole said, I told myself I'd never be my father, chained to bills and broken by banks. He stared at unpaid notices stacked like bricks. Noah Brooks whispered, you fought harder than anyone I know, but debt doesn't bleed when you cut it. Maya Ortiz said, debt is designed to outlive us. The trick is bending it before it crushes you. Gordon Price muttered, I bent it until it snapped me. Evan pressed the stack flat with trembling hands and whispered, every fight feels borrowed, every breath feels rented. The hum of the fridge mocked him, a reminder of fragility. He said, this is survival, not freedom. On a rain-slick street, the world moved on without them. Evan Cole said, they walk free of my ruin, yet they depended on me. He watched strangers carry groceries, laughing under umbrellas. Maya Ortiz said, the system swallows individuals but spares the crowd. Noah Brooks muttered, the riders, the vendors, they'll feel ripples, but not your wave. Gordon Price said, every empire believes it matters. In truth it dies and no one notices. Evan clenched his jaw, eyes burning. I notice. I built it from nothing. I buried nights into it. Maya replied softly, and you're still standing. That's more than ruins usually leave. Evan's silence was a scream no one heard. The whistleblower's files spread across the wall, projected like a confession. Evan Cole said, this proves Victor engineered the collapse, but it also proves I signed my freedom away. Maya Ortiz said, truth cuts both ways, Evan. Expose him, and you expose yourself. Noah Brooks muttered, we could disappear, vanish before the storm closes. Gordon Price said, disappear if you like, but ghosts don't change the system. Evan stared at the glowing evidence, jaw clenched. I don't want to be a ghost. I want to be heard. Silence dripped heavy, the decision balancing like a blade over all of them. Night wrapped the skyline in steel, as Evan Cole stood on the rooftop, wind clawing at his suit. He whispered, every choice feels like a loss. Maya Ortiz said, loss can still be dignity if you decide the terms. Noah Brooks muttered, or it's just defeat with prettier words. Gordon Price said, "Victory, defeat, it's only memory tomorrow." Evan gripped the railing, eyes locked on the horizon where lightning split the dark. He said, "Then I choose to fight on my terms, even if it kills me." Silence followed, broken only by the storm's growl. For the first time, he didn't feel trapped, only decided. The press conference lights burned hot, cameras flashing like gunfire in a silent war. Evan Cole said, "This is the truth you were never meant to see." His voice cracked, yet carried through the hall. Maya Ortiz whispered, "Every document ties Victor to the collapse." Reporters murmured like waves crashing against stone. Noah Brooks muttered, "Once it's out, there's no way back." Gordon Price said, "No way back was yesterday." Evan unfolded the final page, his hands trembling but steady in resolve. He whispered to himself, "I built a company. Today I bury a king." The silence before the questions felt like the whole world holding its breath. Victor Hale's denial streamed live, his calm voice echoing across every device. Victor said, "This is a desperate man's lie." His smile was sharp as glass. Evan Cole stared at the broadcast and whispered, "Even cornered he plays king." Maya Ortiz said, "His mask is cracking. Look at the hesitation in his eyes." Gordon Price muttered, "Predators never confess. They bleed while smiling." Noah Brooks slammed the table, shouting, "People believe him." Evan clenched his jaw. "Then let them believe. The truth will eat through his mask like acid." The studio lights in Victor's world glowed, but shadows pressed in closer. The regulator's office smelled of ink and authority. Every clock ticked like judgment. Evan Cole said, "Here is the evidence. The rest is on you." A clerk took the files with cautious hands. Maya Ortiz said, "We've done our part, now it's theirs." Noah Brooks muttered, "If they bury it, Victor walks clean." Gordon Price sighed. "The system is built to protect its architects." Evan pressed his palms on the desk, his voice low. "Then I've done all I can. I faced him. I spoke." The clerk stamped the file, the sound like a verdict echoing through marble walls. The rooftop was quiet now, city lights pulsing like tired stars. Evan Cole said, "I lost everything I thought was mine." Maya Ortiz answered, "You lost chains too, Evan." Noah Brooks said, "Chains don't pay rent." Evan smiled faintly, his first in weeks. "No, but freedom breathes different air." Gordon Price muttered, "Freedom is fragile, but it's yours tonight." The wind swept across their faces, carrying the last whispers of battle away. Evan whispered, "I didn't win, but I'm still here." For the first time he believed survival might be enough. Silence stretched, not empty but whole. Alone at dawn, Evan Cole stood in his apartment, sunlight cutting through cracked blinds. He whispered, "I lost my independence once, but I will not lose myself again." The bills still waited, debts unpaid, scars unhealed. Yet in the mirror, he saw not ruin but survival. Maya Ortiz's words echoed in memory, "Dignity is a choice." Noah Brooks' voice lingered, "Chains can break." Gordon Price's rasp stayed, "Freedom is fragile." Evan smiled faintly, whispering, "Fragile, but mine." The city stirred outside, indifferent, alive. His story wasn't finished. It had only begun again.